suck it up, to endure something painful, unpleasant, or otherwise dissatisfactory, to deal with or recover from some hardship or stress. Suck it up,
Endure something painful.
Well, welcome to our first live episode of Suck It Up, Man. Today's September 10th, and we've got some interesting news that is unfortunate. Charlie Kirk was shot and is pronounced dead. So we're going to do a little bit of discussion on dating and politics. And as you guys know, September is Suicide Awareness Month. So 988 is the suicide hotline if you feel the need to hurt yourself or to hurt anyone else, especially even in a public matter like we had happen today. So as it is our first episode, we do understand that the world does continue to go around in a circle, I suppose. How are you doing today, Wayne?
I'm good. We had a bunch of topics planned for today, but obviously, as you mentioned, really sad news. I admittedly I don't really follow politics much, but I had seen some of Charlie's clips, especially a little bit before the previous election. Just extremely sad news. I mean, 31 years old, he has 2 kids, really had his whole life ahead of him. And this was just a routine chat, right? Apparently he does these all the time. And somebody posted in a chat that I'm in on WhatsApp, and I saw the clip and I was praying for the best, but when I saw the clip, I didn't think there was a high probability that he was going to survive. I mean, it seemed like a pretty deadly spot of the gun wound, but yeah, it really goes along with what I've been saying, even in a couple of our previous episodes, that we're more connected than ever, but sadly, we're more disconnected than ever. Really, really just tragic news today.
Well, and it was one of those things where Charlie Kirk believed in having a discourse with people and kept stressing that the last thing that he ever wanted to see was political violence or a civil war. And it was one of those things where the reason why he went to universities was to have open discourse with people that he specifically disagreed with, to either get them to change their minds or to learn more information from them. And no matter what your political perspective is, shooting somebody is never a solution just because you have a disagreement with them. Now, I do believe in the saying, everybody's capable of murder. It just takes a good reason and a bad day. But shooting somebody over a political discourse or a differences of opinions politically is something that our country is not. We're not something that it's not appreciated. There's no excuses for it. Really, just looking back, it doesn't solve anything. So this is horrible for that to happen. But again, that does bring us into the topic of dating in today's world with political discourse, because I know for my current wife and I had a little bit of differences on some political perspectives, but I think when it comes to dating, men don't care that much as women do if their political ideals are different. And I even saw a report, and Wayne, I don't know, you saw one as well, where, half of the men didn't care where more women did care. It was like 86% of women or something. What are your thoughts on that? When you met your wife, were you guys on the same political perspectives or what?
Honestly, we really never chatted much about political opinions here and there. It's hard enough dating as it is. If you're going to eliminate basically half of the population that doesn't share your political party, then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot, in my opinion. But apparently with the younger generation, it's really big. Bryson, if you want to pull up figure 1, this is apparently becoming a really common thing where you have a very large percentage of younger women, 18 to 29, who are moving. Yeah, there we go. So this shows the US, UK, Germany, South Korea, and it's very similar across the board. So you have women going to the left and men moving to the right. And as I said earlier, I'm not super well versed in politics, but what's your opinion on this chart and kind of what's going on in the political landscape in terms of dating?
Well, I find that chart really interesting the fact that more men are going towards conservative and more women are going towards liberal. I don't know if that has anything to do with like maybe the divorce rates in the United States. I don't know if that has to do with single mothers in the United States. I wonder if there's a correlation of that where women tend to be more liberal if, they ended up living with a single mom. You follow me?
Yeah.
That might be the case. And maybe that's the reason why more young men have went more towards the conservative side, is maybe they had a single mom or they had a single dad, or maybe they saw the perspective from the single dad. Not really sure, but it would make sense that they would be interested in being with more conservative women. And actually that goes right into clip 2 if you guys wanted to pull that one up, because that's an interesting clip. 2 comes from they were asking young college guys if they would rather date a conservative or a liberal woman, and it comes up pretty shocking. If you've got that, Bryson.
Who would you date? A liberal woman more or a conservative woman more?
I want her to have her own opinions, and I want her to be happy in her opinion, and I want us to work together.
My answer is conservative, personally.
It's not that complicated. Answer's conservative.
Yeah, no, politics don't go in my relationship, but I would say conservative.
Conservative.
Conservative as well.
We love conservatism.
I think that if you are just like a level-headed person, discern from what is bull and what's not, I think that, you're a person that, I could get along with.
I respect that.
Yeah.
Conservative.
Why not a liberal?
Because they care too much about everyone's feelings.
Frick your feelings.
Well, I don't know if I agree with the last part that they said. And in my relationship, my wife doesn't watch the news. Matter of fact, when I called her to make sure she was bringing me dinner, I said, our podcast is probably going to change a little bit because Charlie Kirk got shot. And she was with my mom, and she goes, "Oh, your brother called us and told us that as well." And I said, "Yeah, I didn't call you guys because I said I knew you wouldn't have a clue who Charlie Kirk was, because my wife and my mom don't pay attention at all to politics." So, I mean, for some people it's important, for others it isn't. But I know anytime I'm watching the news, out of respect for my wife, when she comes by, I always mute it or pause it or turn it off, because I know it annoys her. And I can respect that, because there's really not many positive things in the news these days. You follow me?
Yeah, I'm the same way. I don't typically pay attention to the news. I would have eventually heard about Charlie Kirk's unfortunate passing today. I don't follow the news because, as you said, it's mostly negative. But the little I do know about Charlie Kirk, and reading some of the articles that have come out since his passing, apparently he was very instrumental in Trump's re-election in this previous election. I know one of the groups that I guess Trump did very well with is the younger men, which obviously makes sense, as that chart kind of pointed out, that majority of these younger men, 18 to 29, are moving to the right, whereas women are traditionally moving to the left. Again, it's just super sad. I mean, 31 years old and had his whole life ahead of him, and yeah, it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, just for differences of political perspectives, which is no excuse. But, it is an interesting perspective when you start thinking about that. No matter what happens in the world is still going to go around. It is still going to evolve. So it's one of those things where, you still have to take some things and appreciate the smaller things in life, I guess, because life is limited. And I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday was actually my mom's birthday. And I know this sounds weird, but I want to turn it into a little bit of a positive session here, because I do like to try focusing on the positive as much as possible. But I ended up cooking my mom breakfast, and I cooked her crepes because it's one of her favorite things. And it was so funny because in order to do crepes, you have to have flour. I found gluten-free flour and I found whole wheat flour, but I couldn't find just regular flour. So I had to run in her room, and I was like, "Hey Mom, I know I'm waking you up." I'm like, "But where's your flour? Because I'm making crepes." And she goes, "Oh my God." She woke up and she goes, "I thought you forgot all about my birthday." And she was absolutely blown away. And it's one of those things that even though we get tragic news like this, sometimes no matter what, you still have to take some appreciation in life. And it was just funny to get that wonderful reaction from my mom when she was just like completely blown away. Oh, I thought you completely forgot about my birthday. I was like, oh no, I made you crepes. So give credit to my wife though, because she forced me to go to the grocery store. She's like, you need to go to the grocery store and get your mom crepe stuff because you should make that for her tomorrow. And I was like, you're right. I will.
What kind of crepes did you go with? Because I know when my wife and I visited, I think you made me the savory crepes, which were really good.
Yes, I do both the savory as well as the sweet crepes. So on the savory, it's, mushrooms and onions and then some kind of meat source, whether it's like turkey or ham or bacon, and then melted cheese. And then on the sweet, we did both. It was blueberries, raspberries, peaches, bananas, and then powdered sugar and chocolate syrup. So, and I make
Can't go wrong.
I make a lot of amazing breakfasts. But it's one of those things where I realize that for me, cooking is like a way of taking care of people because cooking is, I don't know, I feel like growing up, I always had a home cooked meal from my mom. So I always feel like cooking is a way of making sure that I'm taking care of the loved ones. I guess that's kind of weird. I don't know. Who does the cooking in your household? Do you do the cooking or does BB do the cooking?
BB does most of the cooking, but I put in more of an effort now than I once did. Last month would have been my grandmother's first birthday. She passed away a couple of years ago, and in her later years, she had various health problems where she had to kind of watch cholesterol and all these different things. But her favorite dessert was called lemon bar or lemon bars, which she would get. There's a big grocery store in New Jersey called ShopRite, and the local ShopRite had really great lemon bars. So that was kind of the one treat that we would always buy for her. And we'd say, hey, we know you're not supposed to have this, but, we would give her a little piece after dinner. So last month, in honor of my grandmother, BB was working. She works a normal, 9 to 5 office job. And I'm not a great cook, but I found a recipe on Pinterest. Put it together and it came out pretty good in my opinion. Maybe not as good as ShopRite's, but it was pretty good.
Would it have made your grandmother proud?
Yeah. I mean, that was really the first time I can think that I ever baked anything besides maybe like cookies. The old school, I would get like the Entenmann's or those ones that are already done.
That you
They're
just
already in like they're in the little circles and you just pop them on a baking sheet. That was kind of the extent of my baking experience previously. So yeah, she would have been proud. We did lemon bars. She also loved pasta, so we did a pasta bolognese, which was really good as well. So sometimes, yeah, when you think about tragic news like that's happened today, you really learn an appreciation for some of the smaller things in life. As you get older and you get closer to death, I think, not to get super deep, but you think about these little things. You don't think about the houses or the big screen TV or all these possessions. At least I don't. I mean, I think about all the different experiences. And but we were in New York a couple weeks ago, and we were visiting my in-laws, and we ended up driving down to New Jersey and visiting her grave, which this was kind of interesting side note. So she passed away in January of 24. So it's been over a year and a half. And I went there and we went to the gravesite, and my grandfather, he passed away like over 20 years ago, 2005. So his headstone was there, his brother, and then his sister were all right next to each other. But then my grandmother didn't have a headstone. And I texted my uncle, who's kind of the one that takes care of it. And I was like I saw the spot. There's like a space in the grass for where her headstone's going to be. And I was like, did someone like steal a head? Like, what is going on here? And he said, no, I don't even know. I guess the headstone maker is just behind. I said, year and a half. And I literally GPT'd it. And it's like typically only like 6 months to a year to make a headstone. But apparently this guy I guess he's good business. There's a lot of people dying and he didn't make the headstone yet. So that was, I learned, I mean, I honestly just thought it was something like a couple weeks after, like there's a headstone. I had no clue that it's like a 6 month to a year process for headstones.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And when you're talking about baking, I have a funny story because I used to bake homemade bread, and I'd make usually about 2 loaves of bread a week, and completely homemade, hand rolled, the whole 9 yards. And I used to mix up a lot of different kinds of breads. one of my favorites was a cheddar cheese and chive and onion one with just in like a farmhouse white. I remember there was a week because I told my neighbor who lived right next to me, I said, when I get really stressed out, I like to bake bread. And I would give him a loaf of bread every once in a while. And I remember there was one week where I baked like 6 or 8 loaves of bread. And when I brought over like the 3rd or 4th loaf for free, he was like, you must be really stressed out. You keep bringing over bread and you said you're stressed out. And I can't remember why I baked so much bread. It had nothing to do with stress. I was just in the mood to bake more bread and try different styles. But I remember him just being like, oh my God, what are you stressed out about? No, being in the headstone business, it's funny because I was talking about AI and how AI is going to be replacing a lot of jobs. And that becomes a serious issue. But, there's going to be jobs, like the only job security that we're eventually going to have is something that would be preferred to be done by a human. I don't know if like gravestone headstones would be one of them, but I don't know. Maybe it's one of those things, it depends. How long before every single job is replaced by AI is, I don't know. It's down the road, but it's coming. I know it is.
It is. And obviously that was a topic we had talked about discussing before the tragic passing of Charlie Kirk. But yeah, I think that's, among other issues, one of the things that's going on with the younger generation is, I went through this when I'm 36 now. So, 18 years ago when I'm about to graduate high school, it was kind of this thing where if you didn't say, hey, I'm going to go to a 4-year college, it was almost like you were throwing your life away. Like, wow, welcome to fast food work, Wayne, or, welcome to dead end jobs, Wayne, you're not going to college. But I think a lot of kids now, rightly so, are getting into these trades that are more AI proof. I know in some of the research that I looked at, electricians was a huge one, mechanics, plumbers, right? These aren't things that you would traditionally hear about people saying like, oh yeah, I want to be a plumber when I grow up. I want to be an electrician, but we need these things and these people make good money. So I think I'm glad that the younger generation, at least to some extent lately, is defying some of the pressure that's put upon them and saying, hey, maybe college is for some people, but I don't want to get into a couple $100,000 debt and I want to be able to work and make money sooner. I mean, what
and it's
do you
one of
think?
those things where, yeah, like the trade colleges make a lot more sense. And that's even one thing like Charlie Kirk promoted a lot is that he was not college educated. Now, as some of our viewers might know, and as you know, Wayne, I graduated from the University of Notre Dame, but I don't do anything with my degree. I mean, I do because I tell people getting a degree proves that you can accomplish and finish something, and it proves you can communicate. And I think I used to believe that until AI became so prevalent in writing papers, because getting a degree, you had to write just a shitload of papers to be able to communicate. And yeah, my degree, like playing poker for a living, you do not need a college degree to play poker for a living at all, and you don't need a college degree to do coaching, whether it's life coaching or poker coaching. And what you need is experience. And so even though I might be college educated, one of the things that I appreciated with someone like Charlie Kirk was that he proved that you didn't have to be college educated in order to be smart. He kind of came at it with what was that one movie, Good Will Hunting attitude, where he's having a debate with the other guy in the bar and he just starts spouting off, oh, you must have read this, you must have read that. That's kind of like the way Charlie Kirk operated. And it's unfortunate that somebody just had to like disagree with him and say, well, we're done with that. And just, it's like, why? Just you must have really liked the way he argued, because you couldn't come up with any better argument besides a bullet in the head. But that's not the right. That's
No, yeah, and as you know, but I'll tell the audience, my favorite movie is Tommy Boy. Whenever I'm in a really bad mood from poker, from anything else, I've probably watched it 100 times. I can say every line, but there's one part in Tommy Boy where David Spade's character is talking to Chris Farley's character, and this is shortly after, I believe, spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but Chris Farley's father, hopefully you've seen it by now. But hey, side note, I did watch The Shining last night, which that came out in like 81. So that's like, what, 80 something years old. So maybe so spoiler alert on Tommy Boy, but Tommy Boy's father gets killed in the movie. And shortly after this, David Spade is telling Chris Farley that there are two types of smarts in this world. There are book smarts and there are street smarts. And he was basically saying that Chris Farley's character's father was the smartest street smarts person that he's ever seen. And, I went to college really just because it was expected of me, even though I didn't really want to. I went to a community college for a couple of years. Because I didn't really see the point of going to a 4-year school and paying, I don't even know what it was at this time, maybe 30 grand a semester. So I took the community college approach for a couple of years. But the difference that I learned is when you don't go to class in high school, the teacher's going to come after you and say, Wayne, where have you been? Like, I didn't see you in class the other day. But in college, they don't give a shit. They have these big ballrooms of 100 people, so they don't care. So stupidly, I went to college, paid out of my own pocket, and I didn't show up. But I eventually got into sales, and I think that's one of the things we both offer. Obviously, you have some book smarts. I do as well, even though I don't have a college degree. But with our vast experience, we've both been in sales. We both did real estate. I've traveled around quite a bit. I think that we are uniquely capable of bringing people together. And, on a day like today, really this whole week, I mean, a couple days ago, you had, a Ukrainian refugee. She gets stabbed on a bus for apparently no reason.
Well, that happened a month ago, but yeah, the story broke a couple of days ago. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean,
But
it's
it was like, what
crazy.
the hell? Just random people just doing really stupid shit. And I almost feel like there should be, like, I watch Scott Jennings every once in a while on CNN, but I really think sometimes he just wants to look at some of the comments from the other commentators and just say, are you just fucking stupid? I know that sounds terrible, but sometimes some of the things they say, you're just like, what? Like, you're not making any sense at all. But I saw some people on X posting that they were happy about Charlie Kirk getting shot. And it's like, are you just stupid? Like, what is wrong with you? No, that's not a good reason. There's nothing good about it. It's like, no, but it's a little frustrating,
Yeah, I mean, that's another downside I see of social media is that these people that have these drastic views, like these people disgustingly saying, oh, I'm glad that Charlie Kirk is dead. I mean, I believe some of those people maybe actually believe what they're typing, but I don't know. I mean, how much of it do you think is people just realize that, hey, if you're kind of in the middle, you're really not going to be that popular. But if you're on either end of the spectrum, you're going to get more views. I mean, how much of that do you think plays into some of this craziness that goes on?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I think you're onto something there, because if you're far left or far right, you're just going to get more of the algorithm and get more of the hits. I mean, that makes perfect sense. But yeah, I like how you say that, we're both book smart and street smart. We bring a lot to the table. One of the reasons why we started this podcast was to talk about specifically men's events and things like this that pop up. I mean, there was a ton of young men that looked up to Charlie Kirk, and we have a lot of life experience, but I've actually had a firearm pulled on me on 2 separate occasions, and I'm still here today to talk about it. Both times were unusual situations, but I'm somebody who always supports the gun rights, the Second Amendment, the NRA. I used to be an NRA instructor, even though I'm a convicted felon and I can't own a gun anymore. I still believe in those rights, but I just don't believe in taking out our political differences through the bullet. We do it through the ballot. We vote. That's the American way. That bottom line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a crazy world we live in. But I think really going back to what you were saying, like why we started the podcast, I think more than ever we just need people to bring ourselves together. And we're not approaching this podcast as we're the experts and what we do is right and what you do is wrong and we're superior anyway. We're just really speaking from a place of love that we've kind of had some different experiences and some successes, more failures than successes, but we've
from
learned
failures we learn, from success not so much.
Exactly.
One of my favorite
So,
quotes.
yeah, exactly. And speaking of quotes, obviously we spoke last week when you had an unfortunate situation pop up. And I told you that life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. And I think, unfortunately, and even talking to a Yad, we just uploaded our first podcast earlier today. And speaking to a Yad, he's early 20s, college kid. And he even said it himself. He says, yeah, he thinks his generation is soft. They don't really put themselves out there. They're kind of still living at home. And I know living expenses are crazy, but if you really want to get out there and get your own place, you can make it happen. I watched some other podcasts.
I mean, you might have a few
Yeah.
roommates, but yeah, you can definitely make it happen.
Yeah,
if you're
that's
younger, you know what I mean? And guess what? Newsflash to all the Zoomers who are watching, and I don't mean to sound like an asshole, but when we were younger, we had roommates too. I was married when I was 18, so it was a little bit different, but it was really common that our friends had roommates being 18 to 24. It's part of life.
Yeah. I mean, I told the story about how I wrote a hot check for if you don't know what that term is, no one writes checks anymore, but a hot check is where you write a check and you don't have the money to cover the amount on the check. So I basically wrote a check on a Friday and I told the lady, the landlord of the house I was trying to rent, please don't cash this until Monday because I had like $50 in the account and the check was for 1,200. But I wrote a hot check and it was supposed to be me and my roommate, just one guy. It was a 1 bedroom, bottom floor of a house. She just got divorced and pretty nice place. But after a couple of weeks, we realized, hey, we can't afford this place. So yeah, I didn't want more roommates, but there was a couple other people in the office. This office was located in White Plains, New York, which is like 30 minutes north of the city. So there was 50 of us in the office. My buddy and I, Bill, we were the only 2 people that had a license, which I guess is really common over there. I was pretty shocked. I was like, how is there 50 people and literally 2 of us have a license? But obviously with public transportation the way it is, no one had a license. So there was a lot of other people that had very long commutes. And I didn't want more roommates. I mean, it's literally a 1 bedroom with me and another guy. So I didn't want more roommates, but I had to do what I had to do. We had 2 or 3 people that pretty much stayed with us every night of the week. It was almost like a revolving door, and they helped pay the rent and
You had
pitch in for
2 to 3
groceries.
people in addition to you and your roommate. So you had
Yeah,
like 4 to 5 people sleeping in a 1-bedroom apartment.
yeah, so there's one really small bedroom.
How
It was
many square footage are we talking? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I mean, the living room was, it was kind of an L shape. So I'd say the whole place was probably maybe like 6 to 800 square feet. So I mean, it was a decent size, good size living room. But we had basically one small bedroom. We had a couch, and then we had an air bed, and it was carpeted. So I told people like, hey, if they're coming over, I'm like, we got 4 or 5 people here, kind of like we do on our poker trips. We say, all right, Charles or Billy or whoever wants to stay with us, like, we don't have any beds free, but if you want the couch, you want the floor, like, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that's funny and kind of shocks me. It reminds me of when we had that Airbnb in Miami and it was a 2-bedroom and the second bedroom was literally 6 feet wide and I'm 6 feet tall. So every time I was sleeping, I was like crooked and everything.
yeah.
And yeah, I could just imagine 4 or 5 people in an 800 square foot apartment. You guys must have just been piled in there.
Yeah. But I was really looking at the whole situation as,
A way
they
of
say
surviving.
yeah, they say when you're motivated, you're either motivated towards something or away from something. And I was really more motivated away from my hometown. I love my parents to death, but I didn't want to live with them any longer. I was 20, 21 at that time, still a virgin, but barely any life experiences. And, it's not really attractive to potentially have to say, hey, you're on a second and third date and everything's going well. And it's at that point where, you could take your date home, and obviously I don't want to have to take them back to my mom and dad's place. So that definitely went into the thinking, but I was really super motivated just to get out of my hometown because sadly, and we talked about this in the suicide episode, I mean, I haven't lived there now for 13, 14 years, but I go back a couple times a year, and it's sad. Every time I go back, there's at least a couple people that I went to high school with that tragically take their own life through suicide, drugs, and all these different things. I just saw that at an early age, and that was my motivation, just to get the hell out of there. So going through these difficult times, I mean, I was working a commission sales job. A lot of weeks I'm barely making any money because I had a 100-mile commute one way. There's a lot of tolls. A lot of people who don't live or have never been to the Northeast don't really know about tolls. There's not, I mean, unless you go to like a major city, but there's a lot of tolls in New Jersey. Anytime you cross into the city, at that time, I think it was like $12 you're paying every day
Whew. Wow.
just for one toll. It actually was $8. I think I started this job in December, and then by January they raised it to $12. That's literally just one toll that I was paying. So that's $60 for a 5-day work week just on that one toll. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of weeks where I'm basically breaking even or losing money, but I was looking at it for the experience. I never really had a real job. I worked McDonald's and a paper route and a couple things when I was younger. Ended up having a couple years of an employment gap because of poker. But once that kind of ended, then I just needed experience because it was a double-edged sword. And I'm sure there's a lot of people going through this now where you might have a degree, but how many other people have a degree as well? A lot of these companies, not only do they want you to have a degree, they also want you to have experience. Obviously, if you don't have experience, how do you gain more experience? So you might have to take some jobs that you don't want to take. I didn't really want to take a door-to-door sales job, but I did what I had to do.
It reminds me of being like a culinary chef. A culinary chef moves up in the chef world by working more different jobs in different areas, kind of like what you're doing. Getting more experience is what it was about. Now, I do have an off-the-wall question for you because I know you have a younger sister. And mentioning that you're 21, moving out, et cetera, who got drunk first, you or your sister? I'm just curious.
Honestly, probably my sister. She is, so she's like 4.5 years, I'll call it 5 years younger than me. So yeah, I'm 21. She's like 16. But being the oldest child, I felt like my parents were way stricter with me than with her. Anytime I'd be, what you would actually think the reverse, right? Because I'm a guy and she's a girl, right? Usually, I mean, I don't know, it depends, but they were very strict with me, so I wasn't really allowed to like sleep over at people's houses or what have you. Whereas I don't know if they were just so strict with me that once my sister got to that age where she's going out and saying, "Oh, I'm going studying," she's obviously not going to study. They just didn't care. I don't know, but honestly, she probably did get drunk before me. I've never asked her, but I would put money on it that
would be your guess. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I was just curious. As far as my family, I'm the youngest of 4 boys, so I got away with murder pretty much all the time. I shouldn't say that, but no. Being the youngest, I was, I guess, a little spoiled. But no, I appreciate my mom. If you spoil the baby of the family, he shows up and makes you crepes for your birthday. You know what I'm saying? So I usually do that for Mother's Day, but I think she was downstate for Mother's Day, so I didn't have an opportunity to make her crepes. But I have found, particularly when it comes to if a guy does want to work on a set of skills that doesn't cost a whole lot, that will, for example, improve your dating world, besides maybe looking good, but also cooking. It's one of those things where if you cook, people feel taken care of. But that's something like I mentioned before, where when I cook for people, it feels like I'm taking care of them. It's a way of showing affection, I guess, in some instances. Do you have any specialty dishes that you make or that your wife makes for like a showing of appreciation or any special times of the year or anything like that?
So as you know, she's from Guyana, Guyanese. A lot of people don't know Guyana. It's a very small country north of Brazil. She hates this, but the most famous thing that Guyana is known for, and I think I've told you this before, a lot of people have heard the saying, "Oh, he's drinking the Kool-Aid." So a lot of you might remember a story from I think it was the early 80s. Jim Jones, he was kind of I guess you'd call him like a religious cult leader, but he had almost 1,000 people come down to the rainforest of Guyana and basically gave everyone a flavored drink, Kool-Aid, and it was basically one of the largest like mass suicides ever. But yeah, she's from Guyana, so she cooks a lot of Guyanese dishes. So we have one. I think we actually cooked it. I think I texted it to you a couple weeks ago. It's called pepper pot, where it's essentially beef, and I'm not sure the cut of the beef, but it's one of the more tender cuts, maybe like a prime rib or something like that. But you basically slow cook it in a gravy, and it's usually on the spicier side. Guyanese people definitely cook with a lot of spice, and you essentially just serve that in a bowl, and you typically have some kind of like a homemade bread, or if we don't feel like making bread, we'll get like King's Hawaiian rolls or something like that, and you just dip it in, and it's really, I mean, it's amazing. So next time we come out, we'll definitely have to make it. And by we, I mean BB, not me.
Two things. When you guys came out to visit, my wife had a shirt that said, "I drank the Kool-Aid." And I was like, "Honey, you got to put that shirt away. You can't show BB that shirt." She was like, "Why?" I said, "Because it says I drank the Kool-Aid." I said, and the whole Jim Jones incident. But no, does she make pepper pot for you on special occasions, or is it just like when she's feeling extra homey, or what?
Usually during the holidays, and then when we went back a couple weeks ago, my mother-in-law made it. That's kind of something that we requested, even though it's obviously not around the holidays. But yeah,
Sure.
that. She also makes something called cook-up rice, which is, I guess you'd say it's almost like a stir-fry rice, but it has coconut milk in it. Usually has a couple different kinds of beans, chickpeas, and it kind of almost looks like a stew, but you cook it, and it's really good. You usually has the coconut milk is kind of the biggest flavor that comes through. Again, has some good spice to it. So I'd say those two dishes are probably the most authentic Guyanese dishes that she makes.
And it sounds like your wife does most of the cooking.
She does, yeah. My area of expertise, I guess, would be breakfast. She says that my eggs come out really good. I don't know if that's just her being nice to me, because I don't know if they're that great. I think I've made you eggs before on one of our poker trips. I mean, are they okay or what?
Yeah, they taste fine. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with your cooking. I mean, you make like 2 meals and that's about it. But yeah, I mean, usually make the rest.
It's hard to screw up breakfast. I guess that's why I stick to it. But yeah, I'll do breakfast, French toast. I like French toast. So stick to.
But yeah, guys, if they are trying to impress ladies, like, cook. It's one of those things that, I don't know, maybe what are your thoughts on that? Are you more like, I just go out to the restaurant, or would you prefer cooking?
I think usually on like a first date, you're going to probably do like a coffee. And then if it goes well, then maybe the second date you do maybe some kind of a dinner. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it takes more of a commitment for a woman to like come over to your house on maybe like a second date, right? Because there's so many horror stories out there about, women getting kidnapped and all this other stuff. So I think probably better to maybe wait for that on like a third date. But yeah, I think if you can cook, or even if you can't, honestly, just showing that you're willing to try. I mean, you and
the ambition
BB,
and the confidence. Yeah.
Yeah. You and BB are, and your mom definitely are probably the type of cooks where you can just say, okay, I have some leftover chicken. I got some vegetables. I got some random ingredients in my fridge, almost like the Food Network show Chopped. You could probably just like figure up some amazing dish. Me, I'm definitely not like that. I need to like old school look up a recipe on like Pinterest or Food Network or something, and like, okay, do I have all the ingredients? Yeah.
So I have a story. So yeah, my mom is definitely that type of cook where she can just pick everything out of the fridge and mix it all together. Myself, I caught myself doing that about 2 weeks ago. I was like, I'm really hungry, curious what we're going to make for dinner. And I opened up the fridge, and I kid you not, like 20 minutes later, I had a meal made, and I had an epiphany. And I looked at my wife and I said, I have become my mother when it comes to cooking, because I had no idea what I was going to cook. And 20 minutes later, pop, here comes out a meal. So yeah. I don't know. I really enjoy cooking. I actually have for those of our viewers who don't know, I have an antique stove that is a little complicated if you've never used it, but it's a 1956 Chambers Model C. Damn thing weighs 400 pounds. But it's an awesome stove because I don't know, I like it. I'm particular.
Does it work?
Stuff.
Does it work like maybe not as well as a new stove, but or maybe it does. Maybe it's better. How does it work
No,
compared to a new
it's
stove?
better. It's got 3 different burners, and then it has a pancake griddle and then a broiler right there, and then it also has an oven on top of it. So, yeah, no, it works better than current stoves.
So that's something that you as a boomer would say, yeah, they don't make things as they used to as you're cooking on your old stove.
I'm a Gen Xer, but yes, you can say okay, boomer, because yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, though, like when you buy appliances, and I know this from owning rentals, and I'm in the process of selling some of my rentals, so because I've had a few tenants that have cost me a number of thousands of dollars, where I'm just at the point where I'm just like selling all my rentals and just converting them over to Airbnbs. Yeah, when you buy appliances nowadays, they only last you like 4 to 6 years. I hate to sound like an old curmudgeon, but that's a true story. Like I still have something that was made in 1956. I mean, that's almost damn near 70 years old. And it works with fire, and it still works. But sometimes things are just made a little bit better if they're a little bit older. I don't know. I mean, nowadays what are we on, the iPhone 16 or 17? I don't even know what the hell we're on.
Yeah.
I know I said to my wife, I need a new iPhone. And she was like, what do you need a new iPhone for? Because it was my mom's birthday yesterday. And my wife said to my mom, you should get a new phone, which my mom does need a new phone. Yeah, I think I'm on like iPhone 12. And it's like today you have that pressure of always getting things replaced and moving up and having the latest and greatest. But
yeah,
I don't know.
I mean, I like having new stuff, but I think those people, and I don't, I don't mean to criticize people, but I don't know. It seems almost pointless to me to like every year or so they come out with a new iPhone to be like, hey, I'm going to get this one. I mean, I know what my wife and I do with the phones is we just kind of pay for it with our monthly bill, right? So we'll pay like an extra like $30 or $40 per month. And then over 2 years or so, you pay off your phone. But I mean, I guess if you're jumping from say like I think the phone I have now is like an iPhone, I don't know, 12 or 13. And I had previously like a 10. So maybe if you're jumping like 2 or 3 spots, but I mean, is there really that much of a difference going from a 14 to a 15 and a 15 to a 16? I mean, how, like, what are they really adding? Maybe the camera. I mean, the cameras are already good. I mean, I know,
Right.
I guess the new
we
ones
vlog
like
with them. So yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know how, like, if it's worth paying the extra like $2,000 per every year or so for it. But hey, to each their own, right?
Yeah, I definitely don't think it's worth it. Not at all. And I'm one of those guys where I'd buy a car off of a lot versus lease it. And I know like one of my brothers, he's always the guy where he's like, oh, always lease a car because you're always going to have a car payment. I'm like, no, I like to buy a car because I don't want to have a car payment. You know, that's kind of the way I am. Even on the phones, I'd just rather buy them outright. But yeah, why do you have to continue to replace to the latest and the greatest? I mean, for us, maybe it's just a matter of storage, but that's really it. Like, oh, you can record. I don't know. I've seen some people like even edit videos on phones, and I'm just like, the screen is just too small for me.
Yeah. I mean, I know like when I edited my first 40 videos, iMovie is like basically the most basic editing program there is out there, which it comes preloaded on any Apple device, but I've never actually used it on my phone because as you said, it's just the screen is so tiny and trying to like sit there and like clip these different videos together, it seems it's going to take way longer than it actually should. So
yeah, for any of our viewers who don't know, editing is literally it's a chore, but it is what it is. You know, it's part of the business. So what's up, fellas? Good to see you, gentlemen. So we do have a couple of viewers that are logged in. I saw that Nate and somebody else responded earlier, and I don't know if they click on that link there. I believe they can log in if they wanted to be a guest to chit chat about whatever's on their mind today. Hopefully in a PG rated sense, if you know what I mean. Because I did have my brother say, he's like, should I call up and just say something crazy? And I was just like, no, that's not the purpose of the podcast. It's to talk about men's mental health and things of that nature. Speaking of mental health, this is a good transition. I'm getting a new tattoo, and I've been working on my sleeve. And part of my sleeve, I have a huge unicorn, which represents my wife because I call her my unicorn. I have a peacock and an eagle, which represents my mom and dad. Fago bottle, which represents one of my brothers. And I'm going to get this one, can we pull up figure 3? You got to tell me what you think about this tattoo, Wayne, because this actually represents my ex-wife. And I even got my wife's approval on it. I was a little hesitant to talk to her about it, but you can see there's a Raggedy Ann doll with the hair on fire.
I mean, I'll tell the viewers what I told you like before we got on here. I go, what is this figure 3 that you have? Like, why does it look like some, angry Raggedy Ann doll? And you go, you laughed and you go, oh, that's a representation of my ex-wife. And you've never actually shown me a picture of her, but I know you've mentioned she's a redhead, although she's a Latina, which is kind of a rare combo. But yeah, I mean, I know you've mentioned it in a couple of the other podcasts that you've obviously you guys had really a very abusive kind of end of the relationship, but she's still a part of your life, and obviously you guys have a daughter together, so it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped about it. You can take it down now, Bryson. But no, I'm pretty pumped. I'm actually going to put it on the back of my arm as part of my sleeve because it's behind me. So I like to be one of those symbolic gesture guys. But I think it's an awesome tattoo myself because my ex-wife ended up being angry over a lot of things, and having her hair on fire is like the perfect symbolic way and a nice way to put it. And the other part about it is my current wife thought it was hilarious and thought it was a great idea. So it's very nice to, like, when I was deciding to get a tattoo of my ex-wife, I was hesitant as a mofo to tell my current wife, hey, by the way, honey, I want to get a tattoo that represents my ex-wife. But then I was thinking about it logically, and I was like, logically, it is part of my sleeve. It is part of my history. I've got one of the Chicago bean on my wrist that a lot of my viewers have seen, which represents my daughter because their nickname is Bean. But yeah, it's pretty intimidating when you go up to your current wife and say, yeah, honey, I want to get a tattoo of my ex-wife. How do you feel about that? And then when I told her what I was thinking about, she was like, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's a testament to Jolene and how awesome of a woman she is. That because a lot of women would probably be insecure about that. Like, oh, what do you mean? Like they would get angry and jealous. Like, why are you even thinking about your ex-wife or what have you? But that's awesome that she took that approach and said, yeah, that's okay with me.
Well, it dawned on me today that Jolene has seen the first 3 episodes or heard the first 3 episodes multiple times as I was editing them. And then it dawned on me today that BB probably hasn't seen any of them, and we just released all 3 of them today. Has she listened to them or seen any of them yet?
She kind of knows the topics that we talked about, but yeah, during the week, she's basically doing accounting and payroll at her job. So the weekends would be the one time that she could watch them. And those are her times she just kind of likes to unwind and not think about it. But she knows what we're talking about, and she's really supportive, and she gives me good feedback on different things. So
I was going to say, we're on
Spotify,
so she can listen to it on her phone on Spotify too.
Yeah. We were having that conversation with my sister over the weekend where she said one of her resolutions this year was to read more books, which she's done. And then BB was telling her that she doesn't really have as much time to read, but while she's at work, and a lot of times her job is just like doing reports and paying invoices and talking to vendors. So while she's doing that, she has her headphones on and she's able to listen on Audible, which I think is great. I do the same thing. Like especially this past year when I've gone back and forth to Vegas, it seems like basically every month, I've listened to a lot of different books, including one you recommended, which was Green Lights, I think is the name of Matthew McConaughey's.
Yeah, Red Light, Green Light.
Yeah, which that was really good. Yeah, I mean, I think trying to make use of your time. I mean, as I mentioned in my little advertisement I put in my poker videos, I've been interested in self-help for a long time, probably as long as I've been into poker. I think if you're not trying to better yourself, you're just kind of putting yourself behind the 8 ball. Just as we talked about the competitive job market, where you think, hey, I got a bachelor's degree and I'm set. No, like, okay, do you have a bachelor's degree and experience? Okay, cool. Then, you're going to stand out from the crowd. Same thing where if you are just kind of going through the motions and maybe you're one of the average 27-year-olds that is still at home with their parents, like, what are you doing about it? Right. I mean, I know when I met BB, who's now my wife, I mean, I had really nothing going for me. I was dead broke. I was wearing suits that basically didn't fit me because I was wearing my father's suits, who weighs about 30 pounds. He's 30 pounds heavier than me. So it honestly looked like a Ronald McDonald suit. I wish I could find a picture of it. Maybe I'll find it one day. But I didn't have really anything going for me except for the fact that I was just ridiculously determined. So they say that women are going to date guys based on their future. And then it's the opposite with men. Men are going to date women based on their past, right? So for us guys, you really have to, if you're not in a place you want to be, you're still living at home, you don't have a job you want, you're just working some kind of like dead end job until you maybe get a job that you really want. You at least have to kind of fake it before you make it. That's another one of my favorite quotes or sayings is, if you aren't in a place you want to be, at least like act, as you would be if you were in that position. So I think reading self-help books is great.
Dress for the position that you want, not for the position that you have. Absolutely.
Yep,
and
exactly.
As far as like, from my perspective, I've had a lot of people reach out to me over the years, and they've always told me, like, one of the best compliments I get is they always say, you always give solid advice. Like, you always give advice that surprises me how insightful you are on whatever XYZ subject, whether it's life advice or, for example, my brother-in-law was up here this past weekend, and my brother-in-law, whatever issues he has with my mother-in-law, doesn't really matter. But he was telling me that he was upset over something that happened 15 years ago. And I said, so why would you judge somebody today off of something that happened 15 years ago? I said, I was a completely different person 15 years ago. Now, if it's one of those things that sticks with you the whole time, I get it. But, and he looked at me and he goes, you know what, Josh? He goes, you're absolutely right. He's like, when you say it like that, it makes a lot of sense. He goes, but I wasn't even thinking about it that way. So I've had like a lot of people tell me, particularly like, hey, you give solid advice. You always look at things from a different perspective. I always like to err on the side of optimism. If there's one thing I could stress to people is error on the side of optimism as far as like human behavior. I always believe people, generally speaking, try to do things in the best interest of something. And unless they just do completely heinous acts like today. But, at some point, I'm sure the person who even pulled the trigger thought that he was doing some good in his demented mind. I always like to err on the side of optimism. But it's one of those things where people do reach out for me for that, because it's like, how do you navigate different channels in life, And I don't know. I don't mind giving people advice, and I always caution it with, keep in mind, some of it might be a little biased. Some of it might have a different perspective. But even when I have discussions with my brother, for example, who him and I disagree on a lot of topics, I always find it fascinating to be able to have an open discourse with people who disagree with you on certain subjects, because all it does, for the most part, as long as you don't get too irate or emotional about, at the end of the day, he's still my brother. I'm still going to love him no matter what his perspectives are, and it's nice to have those discussions with people because you get a broader understanding where they might be coming from. And I like the theme of our episode today is kind of a little bit like that, like, because of the Charlie Kirk situation.
Yeah, I would say I have a very similar mindset. I probably would be viewed as more like in the center compared to you. Like, people always ask us, like, how are we friends, or how are we traveling together? Because our styles and our personalities are so different. But I definitely think we're similar in that regard, where it's important to realize that, as you said, when people are doing something, they think that it's the best, or that's really the best option in their opinion at that time, right? We've all made mistakes, and you might look back on it and say, wow, that was really stupid after the fact. But when you were actually doing that, that's what you thought was best, right? It's like, if somebody bullies you at school, a lot of times it's not even so much that they have that feeling towards you. It's really more so how they feel about themselves projected onto you, right? They might be bullied by their father and they almost just kind of like take it out on you. So I think it's important, whether it's political affiliation or what have you, just to keep an open mind and realize that it's okay. People are, I mean, me and you, we've been traveling for years, but there are things I don't agree with you on, and I'll
Oh,
tell it
I'm
to you.
sure.
And I'll tell it to you, but I think that's a sign of a very mature person, right? And I think also in dating, I think that's very attractive to women is if even if they don't agree with your opinions, at least you can be open and honest and understand like, okay, yeah, I might not agree with that viewpoint, but I can understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I wish more people could be more like James Carville and Marilyn Madison? Is that her name? The Republican strategist and the Democratic strategist who ended up getting married. Even though they completely disagree on political perspectives, they're just like, leave politics out of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because
So,
as I said earlier, if you're basically whatever political party you are, whatever have you, if you eliminate the people of the other political party, I mean, dating is already hard as it is. If you're gonna eliminate like half the population, it's just that much tougher. So
and I have seen some clips where people were talking about, my God, is no one or are all the guys on Tinder or on whatever, are they all conservative? It's like they're having, I don't know, a difficult time finding liberal men on some of those dating apps. At least that's some of the clips that I've seen. I don't know. Have you seen some of those?
yeah, yeah. And we talked about this before we got on air, and I mentioned it before. The pendulum's starting to swing back where women are starting to realize, like, okay, feminism, it did a lot of good, but maybe telling guys for the last 5 to 10 years that they're pieces of trash and we don't need them, like maybe that wasn't such a maybe that wasn't such a good thing, right? Because yes, you can accomplish a lot of things on your own, but you and I could both attest that when you have that person in your life that you believe is the person you're meant to spend your life with, it just makes everything in life a lot better, right? So women are starting to come back around where for years they were criticizing men for approaching them, calling them creeps. You had the whole Me Too movement and all this other stuff. But now you're starting to see women say, okay, maybe I do want a masculine man. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? You can still be a strong, independent woman, right? I mean, I would say both of our wives are very strong and independent, right? But there's also a time where, like for example, a lot of times we go on trips. Like we're going to Asia next month, and my wife planned a lot of it, right? She's been there a couple times. She has a best friend that has been there. She's basically her friend is a world traveler, so she gets a lot of traveling tips from her. So she planned a lot of that. But there are some times where she says, "Hey, let's do something Friday night, and like you take care of it." Like she just basically is giving me the green light. Like, hey, you figure out like what we're gonna do. We're gonna go to the beach. We're gonna go out to dinner, whatever it may be. So there's nothing wrong with that. You can have the best of both worlds. You could be a strong, independent woman, but you can also say, hey, you know what? Like I want a masculine man. Like I do need a man to like take care of me. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, and I think men today prefer strong, independent women. I don't believe men are attracted to whiny, complainy women at all. And I'm not here to like degrade women at all, but I think even like when you look at it politically, like part of the reason politically, not to talk too much into politics, even though all the events that happened today, but I think one of the biggest struggles with the Democratic Party is they just sound like a bunch of 12 and 13-year-olds whining sometimes, and that does not attract young men. And it's one of those things that, yeah, it's what our society is going through right now, that most of the men happen to be younger conservative men. I don't know, women are just they're going to have to make some adjustments, because I think you said it best when you said women are like trust fund babies. Most of their value are when they're younger and 18, but as they get older, they tend to lose a little bit of value. I mean, I guess, but I think having a strong, independent woman is very key in a lot of long-lasting relationships. And even my first wife was very strong and independent, but she wasn't independent. She was more codependent. But my current wife is very strong, very independent. If I'm home for a couple of weeks, she's like, "When is your next poker trip? When are you leaving?" And there's nothing wrong with that. It's something that I appreciate and it works well. And it's also one of those things where I know if shit needs to get taken care of because I am on a poker trip, she's going to be able to take care of it. She's not going to call me up and whine and complain and, oh my God, when are you coming back and all this other stuff. And it's like, no, it's just being taken care of. It's important to have that in a relationship, I believe, is to be able to rely upon your partner to be able to take care of things when you're not there.
Yeah, I think those are the healthiest relationships. The ones where, yes, you want the other person, but if you are separated for a brief period of time, but the household's still going to get taken care of, bills are still going to get paid, whatever other responsibilities you have. And I think women are starting to come around to these processes more where they realize that, I mean, and that's probably why we talked about earlier. A lot of the guys are moving right. For the last 10 years, I mean, the left has basically told men to act more like women, which that is not the answer, right? And
No, not at all.
there is times when, yes, you can let your wife take the lead, but for the most part, a guy is meant to lead. Women like to follow, right? I mean, my wife's a Libra. Like, she hates making decisions. She makes them. She makes a lot of them at work. She makes a lot of them for us, like for vacations and decisions or whatever have you. But she would prefer if I take care of it. Like, she just wants to just follow a lot of times. So I'm glad that it's kind of coming around, and we're starting to see this pendulum shift more where I think people are going to hopefully be able to put aside their differences and hopefully not have this loneliness epidemic that we're currently going through.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for our first live broadcast. If you guys do want to be on a part of the show or have some suggestions, we're going to post a little email down below. And we are on all the social medias. Wayne, would you like to close us out with anything else?
Yeah, I think the message that Charlie probably best taught in his teachings over the years is, as you were really telling me before we got on, is he went to these different campuses and went to these different open forums to try to bring more people together. And he would invite, he was obviously right leaning, but he would invite people from the left and say, hey, like, let's chat about these different hot topics that these different news outlets like to kind of blow up and make bigger than what they seem. And I don't want to say that as they're not big issues, but he really wanted to have open dialect with these people. And I think that's really the way to approach politics or dating. You're not going to find someone that has the exact same viewpoints as you. You wouldn't want that anyway, right? I mean, that would be boring if every single thing you liked your spouse also likes, right? So I think just having an open mind and accepting people for who they are and understanding where they're coming from, I think that's going to bode well for you, really in any aspect of life.
Yeah, and I think to keep in mind for people to understand that the reason why they might have a particular perspective is because of their background. And because you don't have their exact same background, in some instances, it's important to be a little bit more understanding. In some instances, not so much, but never in an instance does violence resonate any kind of feasible answer that's rational whatsoever. It just does not. So again, I'll close out with suicide hotline because it is September, which is Suicide Awareness Month, is 988 if you ever feel like hurting yourself or hurting anyone else. And also, if you would like to be a guest on our show, we're going to post a little email down below, or if there's different topics that you think we should be covering. Again, we were covering a slew of different categories today, and then we ended up with this one because of the latest news. And I think that's about it. We appreciate all of you guys, and go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, and let us know any topics. We do have some good guests coming up these next couple weeks. But as Josh said, let us know what you want us to talk about. We're really here just to build a community. So we want to hear from you. Like, what are some things that you want us to talk about? Like, what are some things that you're dealing with? Because that's really the first step, is talking about these things. And that's how we move forward. So, yeah, that about wraps it up.